Stanford, Florida, Missouri, Clemson, Duke, Penn State.
Joshua, what happened?
What happened was I wasn't explained the terms of the game properly.
What happened is what should have happened
And
last
then
time.
in a parallel universe somewhere, if you believe in science, I am infinity in one at this game. So just remember that. In a parallel universe somewhere, I am infinity in one, Jake Butt.
That's right.
The floor is yours.
I needed that, by the way. I needed that. I'll take my victory lap for now, but if, as you guys have been following our show, you know I really needed that. But I did get it anyways, huh?
Yeah, you did. I got no excuses, man. That was a pitiful effort from me. I mean, god-awful, miserable, and against a great opponent, too. Like, I can't do stuff like that.
I'll be honest, though. I played a lot of the NCAA football game back in the day, the mascots. That was second nature, and that's being rebooted soon, so.
I never played the game. Wasn't a thing I did.
That's what it is.
Yeah.
That's what it is.
Well, I'm glad you had that knowledge.
Well, either way, we got it done. All right, welcome in. This is another episode of Red Corner, Blue Corner. He is Joshua Perry, the captain of the national championship, the Ohio State Buckeyes.
Jake Butt, two-time All-American, Mackey Award winner, team captain, all-around excellent human.
And we're excited to have you guys join us today. Of course, this is an interactive show. This is your show as much as it is our show. So go ahead and scan that QR code on your screen to send us your content. And make sure you give us a follow on Instagram at @RedCorner_Blue Corner. We'd love to hear from you guys. So, of course, plenty has been happening across the Big Ten landscape over the weekend. Let's get to these headlines with some quick hits. And a deal is expected soon, which would make former Indiana head coach Tom Allen the next defensive coordinator of Penn State. JP, what's your thoughts on the move?
Well, I think it's a good move overall, right? You look at Tom Allen from a defensive standpoint. I think his defenses have been good. They've been aggressive. We know that's something that James Franklin certainly likes. You can go back to his time as an assistant coach. He was known as somebody who could connect on the recruiting trail. And so I think that Penn State, from a defensive standpoint, can maintain at bare minimum where they've been over the last few years, which is really good for that program. I also think that their problems have really been on the offensive side of the football, and they've got to get that figured out. So hiring a great defensive coordinator does not solve that problem. The other thing I look at is this, is I think there's an adjustment when head coaches become assistant coaches once again.
Yep.
And Tom Allen is a guy who is well-liked by the media, well-liked by the public, but he is known as a grinder behind closed doors. And I think that James Franklin is known as a guy who can maybe wear some people out a little bit. And so I think that they're going to have to get to know how to work with each other, but a good move.
I completely agree, because in the coaching carousel offseason, you have coordinators that become head coaches. This is the opposite of that. Remember, Manny Diaz was a head coach before he became the coordinator of Penn State. That's why I like this move, because I do think there's a unit cohesion aspect to this. And if Tom Allen can play his card right, I know they're going to have talent there. I think this is a great hire.
All right, let's flip it over to another one on the player front. Kyle McCord has committed to Syracuse. Should we be surprised by this choice?
Initially, you should be surprised, because I think we can all agree it was surprising to see him hit the portal, and I believe that both Ohio State and Kyle McCord were better off together, but maybe not. Was it Nebraska? Okay, it wasn't Nebraska. Man, who's Ohio State going to play quarterback? Who's going to be their quarterback next year? And then Syracuse, you might say, well, what's up with that? I like the way Syracuse is trending right now. You got to look at their schedule next year. I would not be surprised if we find Syracuse in the college football playoff. I know that's crazy. Where, do you see Clemson?
No.
You see Florida State?
No.
Who do you see that scares you on that schedule? Kyle McCord, combined with the new coaching staff, I think he's got a good shot to get it done, JP.
I don't disagree with you on the opportunity that he has ahead of him, and I'm not surprised by this move from this standpoint. I think what's gotten lost in the sauce here is that Kyle McCord is a guy who is entering his last year of college football, and he wanted to be guaranteed the job allegedly at Ohio State, and that didn't happen. He was going to Nebraska, and all of a sudden they got Dylan Raiola coming over, and so that means competition for him. And I think he wanted to go to a place where he knew that he could play one final year without having to look over his shoulder. And quite frankly, I respect that, because when your football career is done, it's done.
Yeah. That's a really good point. We'll be following that all the way. Okay, let's head over to East Lansing, where Jonathan Smith's rebuild has got a boost with a commitment from a dual-threat quarterback, Aiden Childs. JP, what do you think he brings to the Spartans?
Well, I think he brings the excitement that people have been looking for. You see what he's doing right there in terms of using his legs. He's a guy with a big arm. He's got the experience of being with Smith when they were at Oregon State. They've had some issues at the quarterback spot, right? It's been a little bit of a carousel these last few years. I think they need a young, talented player that can develop into the guy that can elevate this program. And we've seen when they have solid quarterback play what they can be. So I definitely like this here. And the word for me is excitement when it comes to Michigan State.
I like it. He brings excitement, exactly right, because he's that brand. And I think it also brings continuity. You mentioned he's a younger guy. Some transfer portals are one-year rentals. He's got his whole career ahead of him. I also think it brings stability and confidence because Jonathan Smith recruited him. Jonathan Smith knows him well. Jonathan Smith kind of said the message to all the former quarterbacks at Michigan State and said, I have my guy. So we've been waiting on this move. He handpicked Childs, and I think that's just another momentum to add with some of these other sexy hires that makes Michigan State, I think they're better today than they were last year.
Totally agree with that.
Okay, well, you guys can watch tomorrow's stars of the game right here on Stadium. Where do you ask? Well, be sure to tune in at 8 Eastern for the U.S. Army Bowl. That's right here on Stadium. See football's best young talent on one field, and it will be streaming for free right here on Stadium.
And for more on these prospects, let's bring in Adam Gorney, National Recruiting Director for Rivals.com. Adam, how we doing?
Doing great, guys. How about you?
We're doing all right, and we got to talk about what's coming up here with signing day. Obviously, a lot of excitement for the U.S. Army Bowl as well, but NIL has changed a lot of the way that we think about the recruiting process. If you were to pick one thing that made this cycle more unique compared to others, what would you say?
Yeah, NIL is definitely one. It's affected a lot of decisions, but I'd even point more to the transfer portal. So many guys are in and out, and that is affecting so many high school kids and their decisions. It's really becoming a largely impactful thing, almost recruiting 2.0. When you're a quarterback committed somewhere, and then all of Ohio State's quarterback or Oklahoma's starting quarterback or basically UCLA's starting quarterbacks all across the country, at every position this is happening, now is coming to your school, then you have a late decision to make. So it is big. It's definitely involving a lot of decisions here, and that money is flowing pretty heavily. But the transfer portal has really changed the entire scope of the recruiting process.
Well, Adam, that leads me in perfectly to my next question, where, as it applies to Dylan Raiola, who originally committed to Georgia back in May, and yet here we are as rumors are swirling about Nebraska being in the mix. What's the latest with Raiola's recruitment?
Yeah, it's very, he had started his high school career in Texas, then went to Arizona, then transferred to another Arizona school, finished it up in Buford, Georgia, with the intention of playing at Georgia. And it looked like that was going to be the case. And then Carson Beck goes out and has a pretty surprisingly great season. And it looks like he's coming back to Athens. So that has opened the door for Nebraska here late. Nothing is finalized yet. There have been some rumors that he is silently, that could definitely be big. Following Matt Rule's Twitter over the last couple of days has been interesting because he seems oddly confident going into signing day. I'd say right now, if I had to pick, Dylan Raiola flips from Georgia to Nebraska, and the Huskers once again have hope on the offensive side of the ball.
Yeah, it's always fun this time of year where you're trying to figure out where people are going based off of what a coach's Twitter account is saying, but definitely excited for that one. But I got to ask you about my Buckeyes right now. They've got one of the top classes in college football, and they have commitments from Devontae and Deontay Armstrong from Lakewood, Ohio. They'll be playing in the U.S. Army Bowl coming up this evening. So what can you tell us about what they're bringing to the Buckeyes?
Yeah, what you're going to see from the Armstrong twins at the Army Bowl is one is bigger and leaner and one is bigger and meaner. So, I think Deontay Armstrong is the guy that can play left tackle. He can move people around now, but he's the longer, leaner guy. And I love offensive tackles who come in at 6'7", 270. They're not topped out. They're not over 300 pounds already. He's going to be able to go to Ohio State, fill out, put on even more muscle. Devontae is more of an interior guy, plays left guard in high school, and really puts people on the ground. So he's at 288, will easily play over 300 pounds. But once they get on that college eating program, once they get into that college weight room, both guys have very little bad weight. I also love that. They're athletic, they can move, but they can be physical too.
I had two brothers, and I thought a lot of my development as a football player was just from wrestling with my brothers in the backyard. I can only imagine what went on in their backyard. Okay, but right up there with Ohio State in the rankings is Michigan. They've got 3 players in the U.S. Army Bowl. What sticks out to you about Jim Harbaugh's latest class as a whole?
Yeah, it's in the top 13 right now on Rivals. It could move up even higher, but really what stood out the most to me is that it stayed together. You know, there's the sign stealing allegations, there's an NCAA investigation. We all know that. He missed half the season, but all that is, you know, sort of not affecting the recruiting class or the roster. And that really plays a big factor in this whole thing. You have not seen a lot of guys jump from Michigan to the portal. I'm not sure if there have been any. And now he's bringing in a loaded recruiting class. I think on the offensive side of the ball, they did the best. They're getting Jaden Davis, who's an elite quarterback, puts up big numbers in Charlotte, and maybe the best running back in the class in Jordan Marshall, a Cincinnati kid that kind of spurned Ohio State and some others to go to that team up north, right, Jake? So they did well. They well at receiver, tight end. They're bringing in a really talented kid from in-state, and then they went to Texas for a legacy offensive lineman, the real butt kicker in Blake Frazier. So they did a phenomenal job kind of really calming the waters as the media storm has gone around, and there is still some uncertainty there, but they might not be done. Gatlin Bair is the fastest kid in the country. He beat some really elite track stars in races last year. He's a 4-star receiver out of Burley, Idaho, who's still waiting to make his decision. He'll wait until February, but that could be another big addition because it's down to Michigan and Oregon for him.
Well, Adam, thanks so much for joining us. We know recruiting is always a hectic time. It's even crazier this year, so we appreciate you taking some time with us. And remember, all of you guys can watch these top recruits tonight at the U.S. Army Bowl. It's streaming live at 8 Eastern right here on Stadium. Be sure to check it out.
All right, we're taking a break, but coming up, we already know conference realignment is going to shake up the sport next year, but there's one proposal out there that could totally change the game. Hear that next, right here on Red Corner, Blue Corner.
we need to have a conference commissioner. And I think football should be separate from the other sports. Just the fact that our school is leaving to go to the Big Ten in football, our softball team should be playing Arizona in softball. Our basketball team should be playing Arizona in basketball. But because football left, and they're saying, well, how do you do that? Well, Notre Dame's independent in football, and they're in a conference and everything else. I think we should all be independent in football. And you can have a 64-team conference that's in the Power Five, and you can have a 64-team conference in the Group of Five, and we separate it, and we play each other.
Well, that was UCLA head coach Chip Kelly talking before the LA Bowl about realignment. And JP said a lot of interesting things, but he opened with saying college football needs its own commissioner. What are your thoughts on that?
Well, I've been on board with that. I don't think that you can let the other sports govern how college football should be governed. We know how this arrangement works. College football is a cash cow. It's what people are tuned in for. And so I think that it wouldn't be unfair or unwise to say that they should be governed differently and have their own rules to better facilitate that sport. And so I like what he's getting at with a lot of the topics here, but starting off with a college football commissioner that can govern the way that the sport behaves, I think would be a no-brainer.
You brought up a great point of, it wouldn't be unfair. And I think there's a point that I had a coach tell me one time. Everyone will be treated fairly, but not everyone will be treated equally. And we can all acknowledge that, football is different and is becoming even more different from the other sports. We're heading towards an NFL type model, and the amount of money that is entering the game at the college level is almost absurd. It's almost really unbelievable. He winded it down as he said, he's like, it's ridiculous that, our football, they're going to handle travel, they'll charter flights. He's like, why should the softball team have to travel across the country in the middle of the week? I think that's a really interesting point, and that's the need for the commissioner. What other thoughts do you have on this? I think this is a topic that's going to heat up. I know it's something we've talked about for a while now. Do you have any other thoughts on where the direction of college football realignment?
Yeah, I really resonate with the idea that football can do what they do and the other sports shouldn't have to be affected that way. And I understand that there's a cost of doing business and that many of these football programs and TV contracts come along with it support the athletic departments and the other sports. And so some people would say there's a price to pay. I would say that these are young people who are out here playing non-revenue sports for the love of the game, not because they're out here trying to get famous or go pro in the same sense that a football player would be. To me, it is ridiculous that you would interrupt somebody's academic schedule in the way that it's going to be interrupted in the new era of sports because football decided that they needed to get somewhere where they could better provide for an athletic department. And so if you said we had a couple of subdivisions and they were 64 teams apiece, I believe Chip Kelly said, and football gets to move differently and you can still keep the games and the travel to where it needs to be instead of trying to figure out how you're going to do pods and schedule games so it makes sense that you can play specific teams in a specific area at a certain time. It's wild to me.
Yeah, okay, well, we have a poll here and we want to get you guys to involve, so be sure to vote on that. Should the Power Five break away from the rest of the NCAA in football? Scan that QR code on the left side of your screen. To me, this conversation needs to heat up and it needs to continue. And I commend Chip Kelly for leading it. I know Jim Harbaugh has talked about revenue share. That's another piece of this. College football is different from the rest of the sports. College football today is different from college football 10 years ago or 50 years ago. And college football of tomorrow, 10 years from now, will look completely different. This is a multi-billion-dollar business, and that's accelerating. This is only picking up speed. It is completely different today, and we need to start as a whole finding the best route for what that looks like going forward, because what worked yesterday just simply isn't going to work going forward.
And I got just a real quick thing talking about the way that the game has changed. When I got into the conference in 2012, Urban Meyer was the highest paid coach in the Big Ten, making $4 million a year. And the last time I checked, the lowest paid coach in the Big Ten was making $4 million a year. It's a different time.
That's absolutely insane. Okay, well, to stick with UCLA, they did end up winning the LA Bowl this past weekend, which was one of the games in the RCBC Pick'em poll. So let's take a look at the standings. Everyone got it right except for the staff.
Boo.
Come on, staff.
Boo. You didn't have a lot of confidence, though.
I didn't have a lot of confidence, so, that I was closer to the staff than you and Brooke, but it's going to be interesting to see how this one plays out.
Yeah, I put all of my picks into a parlay. Could stand to win a little bit of cash.
Wow, you're going to take me out to a steak dinner if that's the case.
If I win
That's
that
on
parlay,
you that time.
I will take you out to a steak dinner.
All right, so I'll do the same for you. Also, for you guys, we want to get you involved as well, so be sure to send us your game day picks on Instagram. And coming up, we will turn our attention to another bowl game, the granddaddy of them all. How does Blake Corum match up against Alabama's defense? That's next on the Conference Clash.
We're back on Red Corner, Blue Corner. Time for a little conference clash. Going to bring in our guys. We had A.J. McCarron, who was out there balling over the weekend against Minnesota, got the big win. And we got T-Bob Hebert, and we need to talk about him because congratulations are in order. You had the appearance in the Nutcracker. How'd it go, my guy?
It went excellent. There's a lot of smoke in the street that potentially I could even be in play for the role of Stahlbaum next year, who, of course, is the host of the party and an actual named character. As you're seeing here, right here, I'm just the purple party dad despite the amount of incredible charisma that is leaking through your screen right now. My God, boys, when I tell you this was the single most fulfilling and fun thing I've ever done as an adult, this was awesome. I'm addicted. I loved it so much. And I'm already missing it.
How's the nerves for something like that? Were you nervous when you knew that it was about to be your moment?
Bro, it's a very insightful question, Jake. I legitimately had like football nerves. I mean, it was a packed house, 2,000, lower bowl, upper bowl filled. And it's like, it's kind of out my comfort zone, right? So, in football, for me, it was always like that slow build and then it crescendos right before the first snap. And then you get that hit in and you kind of chill out, right? It was that same deal. Like right before we get on, I was like, do I have to pee? Am I going to pee? Do I have to pee? No, I'm going to pee. I'm going to have 5 minutes. Hold it. And then as soon as we started acting and dancing, I found myself just kind of finding the flow, and the muscle memory and practice took over.
Oh, that's pretty impressive stuff there. Again, awesome. Glad that we got to see that and get the inside explanation. But we do have some football, of course, to talk about. And got a big game, obviously, coming up between Michigan and Alabama in the semifinal. And wanted to ask one of the big questions coming into this game, and it centers around Michigan's run game. Will Blake Corum be able to find any daylight versus Alabama? AJ, I'm going to toss this one up to you first. What do you think?
Yeah, I mean, of course it's a possibility. It depends what Alabama defense, especially front seven, shows up, right? Like, is it the front seven that showed up against Auburn that allowed 234 rushing yards when you knew they didn't have a passing game at all? Or is it the Alabama rush defense that showed up against Georgia in the SEC championship game? So, listen, I think that's the biggest question mark this year for Bama is their defense, allowing big plays, especially, the passing game earlier in the season. They've gotten better. But from a rush defense, we got to see which one shows up.
T-Bob, what about you?
Well, it's interesting to me, Joshua, because I can't I struggle to evaluate the quality of Michigan's rushing attack compared to last year. And with Alabama, as AJ said, with Alabama's gotten into trouble this year, it's because teams been able to run on them. But the thing that jumps off the page to me after looking at like the Penn State game log, the Ohio State game log, and trying to say, okay, those are kind of like Alabama's defense. What do they do in those games? And then looking when Bama struggled, whether it was like Texas, Auburn, I guess LSU. To me, it was the commitment to the run that stood out, right? Like South Florida rushed for 177. I think they had like 39 carries, somewhere around there. Auburn rushed it over 40 times.
Right.
I don't know how much play-to-play success Michigan's going to have, but they will remain committed. And I think that will bear fruit in the end. And again, when I say Alabama struggles, it's a relative struggle. These are all great teams that we're talking about. But look against Penn State. Michigan rushes it 46 times. 39 times against Ohio State. So I would imagine that even if it's not popping off early, that Michigan's not going to abandon the run. And I don't think that Alabama offense is dynamic enough to necessarily apply the pressure to Michigan to have to abandon it. And so I think they're going to remain committed. I think if they run it around 40 times, that's going to be their best path to potentially winning this game.
Yeah, I think it's interesting that you mentioned the volume there, because I do think that is a factor. I'll say the biggest thing to me is if J.J. McCarthy is a feature in the Michigan run game, then Blake Corum's going to get his, and that Michigan run game is going to pop. Because when you start to look at LSU, Jaden Daniels, right, Auburn, quarterbacks couldn't throw the damn ball. All they could do was run the football, right? And so to me, I think quarterback run has to be a part of it. Jake, before we switch over, what do you think?
I think I agree with every one of you guys' points. I do say, as it applies to some of the games that Alabama struggled, of course, the Auburn game, it felt to me maybe Alabama just was looking ahead a little bit and expected to win. When you're playing for a national title, and the advantage of a 4-team playoff is you're going to get Alabama at their best.
Now it's time for little rivals down south. The last thing that I would add on there as well is that I do think that Michigan's weapons are going to struggle against this Alabama secondary, right? So probably finding success on the ground is going to be one of the best parts. Actually, Jake, I do want to get your insight there. How do you feel about Michigan's weapons matching up against this Bama secondary, which is the best in the country or, among the best.
Well, I think these two things are related, and I think this is what has got Michigan in trouble in their past two runs at the playoff is, you can beat up on lesser teams for the majority of your schedule, but then when you get to the college football playoff where teams have a long time to prepare you and you're playing just better quality of opponent, you start to struggle a little bit. I know what Alabama is going to say is they can play man coverage. They can commit extra resources to the run, understanding they have the advantage on the outside, which of course hurts Michigan's ability to rush the football. So then I go back to JP's point and say, hey, you have to get a little bit more creative. You're not just going to run duo or power 40 times this game and expect to win. You do have to get creative, create an extra gap, create an extra lane with the quarterback run, whether that's JJ or Alex Orji. Of course, they'll benefit from maybe JJ McCarthy's 100% healthy going into this game. I do think it's going to take all hands on deck, though.
And I will add to that, though, is they are going to have to do some duo and some power type runs, because I think the key for Michigan in this game, especially from a passing attack standpoint, is they will need to play action pass, right? Is how do you beat man coverage a lot of times? Of course, you can get in the gun, you're going to run meshes, but another way to kill that and get a defense out of man is also doing some good play action, deep crosses, low crosses, along with that, and having some nakeds off of it. So I really think like Michigan, from a passing standpoint, is going to need the play action pass to be successful in this game.
And that's the one to watch, too, the deep cross with Roman Wilson. He's one of the fastest guys in the Big Ten. I know you got speed down there in the SEC, but he ran that deep crosser so many times in the cornerbacks and trail, and J.J. McCarthy could put it on him. That's a big play waiting to happen if you can get that play action going.
So now let's flip the script a little bit. Let's head to how Michigan will defend Jalen Milroe. And AJ, I'll start with you here. Well, actually, Joshua, I want to start with you. First off, as kind of the defensive mind of this group, when you look at a quarterback like Milroe, who is playing explosive, clean football when he's been at his best this year, and it's something that Michigan hasn't really seen when you're talking about a quarterback who can move like Milroe, what do you think Michigan's best path to success is?
Yeah, it's an interesting thing because Michigan's been, when they've gotten pressure on quarterbacks, they've done it from bringing extra rushers. They haven't really been a four-man rush team and had success getting home. And so I think you have to be creative with some of the blitzes, and I think it means changing the picture from pre-snap to post-snap and where the different guys are coming from. If you can do that, I think you can get Milroe to hold the ball for a beat. The other thing is when you're rushing forward, you talk about this with athletic quarterbacks all the time, is the dudes up front can't think that they're going to throw their best pass rush move and just beat a guy, because the quarterback will make you wrong every time. It's about a control rush, a level rush, maybe even a flush where you're running one guy over the top and you got the other edge is bull rushing, twist game inside so there's no gaps. But the biggest thing is when you have an opportunity to tackle a man like him, big, strong dude, you got to tackle his arm. There's none of this trying to pull him down by the legs. He can run out of that kind of stuff. You got to grab him by the arm and get him down.
I will say there's a few things. There's a few things. When you think about a quarterback that has the rushing ability, whether that's organically through read option or off schedule, getting out of the pocket, how do you stop that? Well, you need gap discipline and assignment discipline. And you can look throughout this year at the complexity of Michigan's scheme to understand that they're mature, they're veteran, they're experienced. I believe those guys are going to have a game plan in place, and they have the experience and intelligence to execute that game plan. The other thing is when you look at off schedule, when a quarterback leaves the pocket, what does Michigan play more of, zone or man? Michigan actually plays a lot of zone, and what that means is their eyes are going to be in the backfield on the quarterback as they settle in their zone, rather than in man coverage where your eyes are on your defender. Man coverage, the quarterback run can really kill you. Zone coverage, you have more insurance built because guys' eyes are on the quarterback. So I will say I do think Michigan is set up to slow down Milroe in this scenario.
But now, and I understand from a defensive standpoint playing zone coverage. Also, though, when you look at Alabama, a lot of their passing big plays from a passing game standpoint have come from play action, whether it's out of the gun or out of the pistol, right? So when you do play action and a team's playing zone, the first 5 steps from a linebacker standpoint is looking back, right? I mean, they are running and looking back to see what zone and what window they need to be in. That's an issue, too, because now they get more depth. I really think Michigan needs to play man coverage, whether it's one robber, one hole, and be able to have maybe even a double spy on Jalen to be successful in this game. You're going to have to win some man matchups outside, but dropping a safety down in the box, letting him and an extra linebacker spy to where you almost have two spies where, hey, you got this side, I spy this side. If he escapes, like they're going to have to mix the coverage up, definitely.
And I'll jump in on that too. I think playing man-to-man makes a little bit more sense from the standpoint of the scramble drill, because when you're in those zones, all of a sudden you see that quarterback start to break contain. One of the things you do, and especially for linebackers, we're like dogs chasing our tail. We see that quarterback and we all think that we're going to get the big hit on the quarterback. But we just voided and vacated a bunch of zones, and now he can make a play on the move. And once you get all that space, those guys can run. When you're in man-to-man, everybody's assigned up. And to your point, AJ, if you can say we're going to play with a spy, we're going to play with a couple of spies, those guys know when the play breaks contain, they get to go.
Boys, red corner, blue corner, Joshua, Jake, thank you so much. At this point, we'll let you go. In our college football power hour, we'll roll right along with rivals down south as look at this. I never thought I would say it, AJ, but I mean, Ole Miss football is on fire right now. Not only with a bowl game against Penn State, do they have a chance to win a New Year's Six Bowl, win 11 games the first time in school history, but there is no one dominating the transfer portal like the Ole Miss Rebels right now. They got the number 1 ranked linebacker, Chris Paul Jr., number 2 edge, number 2 wide receiver, Juice Wells, more on him in a second, interior offensive lineman, a few safeties, a great corner, and then maybe the crown jewel of the portal thus far, Princely Umanmielen. Oh my God, dude. I practiced it so many times before the show. I'm so mad. Princely Umanmielen. Princely Umanmielen. Number 1, this is a guy, 7.5 sacks, 11.5 TFLs, coming over from Florida, and reportedly they're in the lead for Walter Nolan. And they got Judkins returning, most likely Dart's returning. I mean, AJ, this sounds crazy, but like going into next season, the expectation for Ole Miss should be a college football playoff team.
Well, 100%. I mean, but listen, if it was the 12-team deal this year, I mean, they'd be a college football playoff team as well. So on top of that, like if it was, 4 next year, 4 teams again, then like, all right, let's build up the hype a little more. Yes, with this much talent coming in from the transfer portal, like they should definitely make it. Like Lane should have no excuses. You got A&M who's going to have a new coach. They're struggling. Like you have all the hype behind you and building, especially if you win this bowl game against Penn State, you're going to have a ton of hype behind you. Your recruiting is going to take off from the portal standpoint, from high school standpoint. So this is Lane's time, right, to take advantage of it and make something out of all these transfers they're getting.
Well, kind of a rough estimate in my book, if you just say, okay, how many SEC teams will make a 12-team playoff every single year? I think it's going to be about 4, right? Some years it'll be 5. The odd year it might be 3. That's kind of hard to fathom. And so it's like, okay, well, who's going to be in that top 4? And it kind of feels like Texas, Georgia, Alabama for sure. And then it's like, okay, can Ole Miss emerge from everybody else? Will they beat Oklahoma? Can they beat LSU? And if we look at their schedule like we did last week, they actually have a pretty favorable schedule. Where does Ole Miss traditionally struggle? On the defensive side of the ball. Well, where are the majority of these guys coming from? 7 to 9 transfers right now. On the defensive side of the ball, they paid Pete Golden $2 million a year. He has to get it done. And then we mentioned Juice Wells coming over offensively. This is a cat who just a couple of years ago was second in the SEC in receiving. He now teams up with one of the top receivers in Trey Harris. That might be the best duo in the conference. Like I said, you have Quinshon Judkins returning. No excuses. And you know what's crazy, AJ? It's like, how is Ole Miss doing this? From what I understand, talking to people who are very educated in the NIL world, Ole Miss has huge grassroots buy-in right now, right? And we all know that a lot of Ole Miss attendees were kind of wealthy to begin with when they went to school there. And it looks like now they're all believing that, no, if we commit now, like if we throw money in now, we can actually maybe make a run at this thing. And what I do agree with Lane Kiffin on, he seems to say, okay, with all this NIL money I have, instead of going after high school recruits, unknown commodities, I'm gonna go after known commodities. I'm gonna go after players that I've seen play on this level and already have at least some idea of what they can do.
100%. Like the biggest challenge for Ole Miss and Lane Kiffin, getting all these big time guys in, right? Like top players from all over the country, from a college level, is getting them to buy in to the process that he's created, that he has in that program, and getting them to buy in quick, right? It's going to be a quick turnaround. And before you know it, the next year's season's going to be here. And will they hit the ground running from week one? And will they have that unity as a team? Will they have that brotherhood? Or is it still going to be a work in progress? And because all these guys are not going to be great locker room guys for you, right? You're going to have some bad apples. It's just part of football. It's part of the locker room. So can you keep these guys from being such a bad apple to where it ruins everybody else? And then it just goes, throughout the team with guys that, you haven't had this many transfers before. And it's been guys that have been brought up through this program and through the university that you've kind of built and mentored along the way. So that's going to be the biggest challenge for Lane.
Yeah, I mean, it's a very salient point. I mean, you just look at LSU 2 years ago, they bring in a whole new secondary and basically everyone hits, right? Good leaders, veteran guys, it all works. And they end up upsetting Alabama, win the West. This last year, they get an all SEC performer, an all ACC performer in Deuce Chestnut. They get a former 5-star guy in Denver Harris, but bad apples, both off the team a couple of games in, and all of a sudden you're scrambling. Still impressed. All that said, I don't know if I've ever seen a better time in my adult life to be an Ole Miss fan. Like, I don't care. They've had some good teams. I think this is the hottest the brand has ever been. How good is it to be a Georgia fan right now? It probably felt a lot better just a couple of weeks ago. Still to come, we got some good news and bad news for Dog fans as a mass exodus in Athens is currently underway. back to Rivals Down South. This is a college football show. The lifeblood of college football are great high school recruits, and there is no game that features more of them than the U.S. Army Bowl. That's right, and it's going down tonight right here on Stadium. You want to see the next Saturday and Sunday stars? It all starts 8 p.m. tonight, streaming free on Stadium. So waiting for youtube.com/watch stadium. Come hang out tonight. It's going to be a great time where you will see these stars of tomorrow. The U.S. Army Bowl, shout
That's
out.
a great game.
Did you get to play in it, AJ?
Game. Yeah.
I didn't get the invite. It was very close. I had shoulder surgery.
Yeah, I had to decide that or the Under Armour game. Hell, I tried to play in both, but there was some rule against it where you could only play in one.
Wow. Army All-American, went on to win 3 natties at Alabama. XFL's all-time leading passer. What a charm existence our QB10 leads here. But look, no better insight than nobody better than to kind of bounce quarterback topics off of. And we were just kind of joking during the break, like, man, how much would AJ gotten paid playing now? Because here you have Carson Beck, who had a good year. Like even you could say a very good year at times. Now, ultimately fell short when it mattered most, but Carson Beck had a fine year, and if he returns, I'm sure he can make himself into maybe a top 10 draft prospect. But like, word on the street is he's unsure if he's going to come back or not next year, and he's going to play in the Orange Bowl, but he's saying he wants $4 million to forego the NFL and return to Athens, calling it, quote, well, I should say it's rumored that he wants $4 million. AJ, is Carson Beck worth that much?
Hell no. Listen, I'm not hating on the kid. Like, I hope the kid gets paid. I don't think it's a question for him if he should return or not. Like, listen, he had a good year, but he didn't have, like, we're not talking insane numbers. Yeah. I mean, hell, they were great at running the ball. Like, and you know, they struggled running the ball against Alabama, and that was his opportunity to say, hey, listen, put the game on me, right? Like, I mean, you had all the hype. You're playing basically at home. Like, yep. No, listen, he's got to return. Whoever's giving it, if somebody's giving him advice to come out, like, I think they're dead wrong. I wish him nothing but the best, but and also to, you know, want $4 million. Hell, if somebody's dumb enough to give that to him, then power to him. But not a chance. I'd give him $4 million in monopoly money.
I mean, and look, I know he's just doing good business and whatnot. It's like, you gotta do what you gotta do. Yeah. He's calling it the hardest decision of his entire life. But like, shoo, if I'm Carson Beck, bruh, give me $1 million. You know. Hell yeah, dude, I'll come back for $1 million. I mean, I'm the big man on campus. I know I got the job. I got a great team around me. I have another chance at a national championship. I can get better on this stage, maybe make my draft stock even better. Like, I think he absolutely needs to come back. I think dog fans also want him to come back because look at what's happening to Georgia right now. They're going to enter this bowl game without 17 different players on that roster as they have all entered the transfer portal. And it's kind of fascinating, AJ, because this is something that I did not know that we were going to see in this current reshaping of college football that I feel like we're seeing more and more of, which is the democratization of college football, where all of a sudden Alabama, Georgia, these schools, they struggle because they always put together like the best classes in the country, and then guys would have to stick around for the most part, right? Now, with this ease of transfer, it's harder to hoard all of that gold in your cave, like Smog or something along those lines. Like, all of a sudden, you're seeing all these players start to filter out because not only do they want to play, but other schools will pay them. So instead of just like sitting there and riding the bench for another year at Georgia, even though that you could argue that could be the best thing for your long-term career, whatever, all of a sudden now you go to Arkansas, maybe make like $100K or $50K, and you get to play right away. So I wouldn't be too panicked if I'm a Bulldog fan. I'm more just pointing out, like, this is something that all of those uber talented teams are going to have to deal with kind of year in and year out from this point.
Yeah, I'm with you. Like, this isn't a hit the panic button type of situation, right? I mean, they're literally one quarter away from playing in a third, probably straight national championship. Like, you're going to have, just with the way college football is, you're going to have this every year, right? Some years it's going to be more transfers leaving your team than, the next. But Kirby's also at the University of Georgia, right? He's still Kirby Smart. He's still top 3 coach in the country. Like, you're going to get just as many guys wanting to come play for you as you are leaving, right? So it doesn't matter. Like, who cares? If they don't want to be there, then I promise you didn't want them on your team to begin with. So let them go, and you'll be fine next year. You'll restock and get more athletes in, get more top players in, and be right back in the same situation.
I mean, you know what this does? All this does is allow Kirby Smart and Nick Saban to sign more high school guys if they want to. Yeah. Like, remember, there's no more 25-man limits, which makes sense because now you can't just suffer this attrition over 4 years and maintain your roster. So, yeah, do not be overly concerned. But when one of these major teams does not make the playoff, this situation, you're going to see more and more. All right, still to come here on Rivals Down South. It's the holiday season. It's in there. I got a little pep in my step. We're going to show you a gingerbread stadium that has to be seen to be believed. Plus, we got some breaking news on Jaden Daniels. Welcome back to Rivals Down South, and check out this magnificent work of art by Alabama dining executive chef Matt Lowry and his culinary team. Matt Lowry. They made a replica of Bryant-Denny Stadium using gingerbread. What you're witnessing right now, to give you some idea of the scale, 6 feet long. It weighs 750 pounds. It uses over 3,500 pieces of candy. It took 40 hours to build. And it's just a complete abomination. And rather than eat it, I would smash it with a baseball bat if I was given the opportunity. But it is impressive nonetheless, AJ. How about this? So right before the show day, we got some breaking news out of the LSU camp. Jaden Daniels has announced that he is going to forego LSU's ReliaQuest Bowl and will head to the NFL draft. First off, thank God. Please, look, I know, bowl games are awesome. Jaden Daniels is not being to be playing in the ReliaQuest. You've reportedly maybe made yourself into a top 10 pick. Go get ready for the draft like Caleb Williams, like Drake May. Go do your thing. AJ, do you have any memories of Jaden Daniels that stand out to you from the last couple of years?
Well, I think just, seeing him progress over the years, right, at Arizona State and leaving, and then that video resurfaced of his teammates there dogging him and telling him that he sucked and everything. And then, to go through the struggles last year with the offense and people talking about getting pulled, and he's, from a quarterback standpoint, not great. And then to come out this year and have the year that he had. So it was awesome from, an older quarterback watching a younger guy fight through that adversity and be successful in the end.
Yeah, the improvement to me really speaks volumes about why I kind of like him as an NFL prospect. So I think that's kind of an intangible work ethic thing when you look at that year-to-year jump. But more so than anything, that Florida game, dude. Over 350 through the air, over 200 on the ground. I think it was like 5 touchdowns this year. It was simply incredible. Now, if you're a Tiger fan, it's time for the Nuss Bus. AJ, thank you so much. We'll see you later. Huge shout out Stadium. See our rivals tomorrow.
What's good, NBA fans? Welcome into Inside the Association. Filling in for Cam Smith, I'm Harrison Sanford. And filling in for me is Stadium basketball analyst Isis Young as we start looking forward to everything that might happen in the NBA today. And of course, we have to review what happened over this past weekend. We have our weekend winner.